All right, everyone, we're live. Welcome to another Masculine Geek Wednesday, one of the best days of the week, one of the best shows on the internet, Masculine Geek. So this is Masculine Geek number 180. We're doing a BDSM talk with special guest, traditional Taboo, also known as M. You're not going to know her real name because it's all mysterious and you can't pronounce it. We're not even gonna try. So we're gonna go with M.
Perfect.
And so welcome to the show.
Welcome, everybody.
Indeed. So you and I have been following each other on Twitter and have had a repartee back and forth for quite some time now. And I checked out your website, and I like the niche that you've created for yourself because I don't think anyone else is doing it. You're taking a almost seems to be a traditional therapeutic alternative, and adding to it a traditional DS and kink layer on top of it.
Yeah, exactly. So going through school, once I completed the book portion of my master's program and then got to the clinical portion of it and started working with actual clients and looking at like the ethical paradigms to work under, like parameters to work under my license. The APA has gotten like increasingly woke, and I don't fit in under that. So I felt like through school itself, I struggled enough, gotten a lot of discussions with people that got heated for various reasons. And the fact that you can just lose your license based on a complaint, if like I took a more masculine angle or I took a traditional angle with a client, yeah, you're not supposed to influence or lead them or anything like that. But to act like your own biases don't come through in one way or another is just, I think it's a lie that people tell themselves, therapists specifically. So I just decided to branch off and do my own thing, where I truly believe that kink and DS specifically, getting back to males being the head of the household and truly being the ones that take the lead and take charge, and then women taking the more feminine role and eliminating that power struggle that seems to be the problem in a lot of modern relationships right now. I think DS is the answer to it.
I absolutely agree with you. I think it's a law of the universe almost, and in our guts we know this to be true. Yeah. It's just that our cultural conditioning, what we're told is especially with the with feminism, which is just it's everywhere. You can't get away from it.
And it's both blatantly everywhere, but it's also subtly everywhere. It's that prevalent, the way they introduce it into everything from the media to especially in academia and in school. It was very much in pretty much everything, every therapeutic technique that was recent. So some of the older ones, when you had like analysis with Freud and stuff like that, that was different, a different time. But then once you got to the modern ones where there was a heavy emphasis on emotions and a heavy emphasis on talk therapy rather than like solution oriented.
A lot of Carl Rogers stuff too. Yeah.
So it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think, sorry.
Keep going. No, keep going.
I think it's alienating men, and I think it's giving men little options. I mean, I don't blame men for when they hear like, hey, let's go to couples therapy, or, maybe you should go get help or whatever. I don't blame them for being apprehensive. I would,
Absolutely. It's funny you say how subtle it is too, because it's also made its way into the commercial, what I call commercial BDSM.
Yeah.
It's on the sites. It's in the literature, even down to a lot of the handbooks being written. I can always tell when there's a book written by a woman that's masquerading as a man with the pen name, because one of the things that they poo-poo, they're like, oh no, you can't do this, it's not right, it's not healthy, is you can never withdraw your attention. I'm like,
so that's a dead giveaway.
Yeah, like you number one, no, because that is in behavior modification and training you. That's one of the first rules, number one. Number two, you're a fucking woman, so shut up.
It's one of the most effective tools that you can use. Absolutely. So yeah, if you were to say something like, it's unhealthy to do that, you're taking away one of the most effective tools in the toolbox for,
of course,
the female sub, at least.
Of course.
Yeah. One of the things that I found fascinating, I live in the Pacific Northwest. I'm not sure.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Do you?
I'm not doing this for you, dork. I'm doing it. I'm just explaining for.
No, I know. It's just funny. It's everyone who watches Masculine Geek. Everyone who watches Masculine Geek knows you live in the Pacific Northwest.
Hi, I mean, he says it every show. So
I'm just giving context for the guest, saying that it's funny how people talk about gender equality, but yet what I see around me is. There is a DS relationship, but it's almost entirely the man who's in a submissive relationship or in a submissive position with whatever his relationship is with the woman. And I find that so fascinating because they call that equality. And I'm like, I've never heard a woman say to me, I got to ask my husband's permission to do something.
Yeah.
But I hear all the time from men where they're like, yeah, well, I can't do that. The wife won't let me, or whatever it is. And so I'm guessing that you probably have to deal a lot of that in couple or the type of therapy where you're almost having to like help men unlearn what they've been conditioned to believe.
That's exactly right. That's the main thing. And I think I tweeted about this the other day, but I specifically said it was conflict avoidance, and that could go either way for males or females. But when I wrote that, I was specifically saying like males. That's what I was implying, because it does seem that if there's a conflict, and this is the number one problem, because it's like, oh, I operate in this DS dynamic, but I have this thing that I really want from her and I don't know how to ask her. I don't know what to say. She might get mad. Or how do I get her to do this?
Yeah. Mother, may I?
Yes. And then right there, you already know, okay, like you like the title of being a dominant, you like the idea, but if you can't even approach the topic, you have no idea how to start that conversation because you fear her reaction or her rejection, then I don't think you can call yourself a dominant. Yeah. If you have the fear, I think that's normal, but then to not face it, then that's not a dominant energy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's what I get the most is it's this, well, I like the idea of this, but I have no idea how to actually take charge, take control, put myself in an authority position, because I think primarily rejection. And two, it's the guilt and the verbal abuse that follows making maybe a decision that she didn't agree with,
right.
Something basic like that. And it's just like this, outpouring of a lashing after that, and they don't want to deal with it.
Now I've always said to guys, I've even written about this as far as setting a precedent is concerned.
Yeah.
Because if you've set a precedent in your life, in your relationships, whether it's work, friends, romantic, lover, whatever, if you start out being this one thing and all of a sudden you try to do this switch or you do something different, your partner, your friends, your coworkers are like, whoa, wait a minute, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're not consistently congruent with what you say and how you act, that's going to be a problem. So how would you especially with couples, how would you work with couples where the guy's like, all right, well, I need to make this change and I do need to be more dominant. I understand that, but how would I go about doing that? Because she sees me as this weak piece of shit, and how am I supposed to make that flip? How would a guy actually comport himself with that? Is it something where it's a slow change, or would it be something that's really drop a hammer?
And I'll add an extra question to that is, in a relationship, by that point, the woman knows all of his buttons that she can push. Whenever he's not behaving the way that she wants him to behave or perceives him as, and he's trying to change himself, she knows what buttons to push. So how does a guy, in addition to Vince's question, how does a guy deal with overcoming that, where someone's hitting, during an intimate relationship, so she knows his like insecurities?
So the only way to actually get a couple to start on a path that they're not originally on, something as huge of a change and a shift as DS, is you have to break it all the way back down. And it's a super slow process of getting. What I do is I start with the couple and break down, I call it like authenticity, but it's almost brutal. And I use myself as a facilitator to allow them the space to do that. But I get to the bottom of what her thoughts are towards him, his thoughts toward her, their fears, everything. All of that has to be broken down. And it has to come from a place of what I like, Albert Ellis. And it's like an idea of unconditional positive regard, acceptance across the board for fears, these hangups that we have after we have a significant amount of time with each other and we learn each other's buttons, as you said. You have to get to a place where you accept each other and then build up from there. And there's tons of pitfalls and it's messy. It's not like a clean thing. So usually I'll have a couple for a significant length of time. It's not quick at all. And I allow them access to text me and call me if need be. And if they get into arguments or anything like that, to where I can help facilitate those situations where, things are going awry. But it's not quick. It's not dropping a hammer. It's because as soon as that happens, everybody's defenses go up. If he tries to do that, her defenses pop up, and then she reacts back with usually more of that aggression and more of that power. And then it's just kind of like this, piling up. Mm-hmm. So it is,
that makes sense,
all the way down to base level. It's almost like tearing your relationship down
to its
back to scratch and rebuilding it.
To what extent would you say that I'm not going to say the fundamental problem, but one of the main problems is that the man is not assertive or dominant enough in the relationship, where he's too passive. He's not
milquetoast.
Yeah, he's milquetoast. He's not decisive. He doesn't have a plan. He defers to her. Kind of basically, how often is that the case where the guy's not, as opposed to, he's being macho man, machismo, overly.
That's the passivity is like 90% of the issue. I rarely get the issue where he's too much. He's too, masculine. He's too much, too powerful. I don't get that. I definitely get where it's broken down to the point where she doesn't trust him, doesn't trust his ability to lead at all, has no faith in his ability to make decisions. And because she has taken control, then at that point started making all the calls, making the decisions, resenting him for it. That resentment comes out in various attacks emotionally toward him. And then he just completely shuts down. And that's where you get the passive guy, the totally withdrawn husband, boyfriend, whatever. And you get the total domineering, bitch woman that you can just see it on his face. He's just completely broken by it.
It's almost as if he's become a child at that point.
Yeah, it really is. It really is a parent-child relationship in a lot of ways. They're together because of that kind of becomes this toxic attachment bond where, you know, he's there because he feels some sort of need to still be in the relationship, for whether that be he feels responsible for something, he feels guilt. You know, those are typical things that men feel when they want to leave or feel like it's best for them to leave, and they ultimately don't. It's usually responsibility or guilt, you know. And she just becomes, I feel like, almost power drunk on that. You know, and it creates that kind of toxic attachment, and it just reinforces, and it keeps doing that, and they can't ever pull themselves out of that cycle.
I was curious, with the couples that you've seen in your career, how many of those in that situation have the men come from households that were either female dominated, or there was no dad at all? It was raised by a single mother, or dad was there, but I'm basically being exactly how dad was with mom.
It's staggering. Like, I can almost predict it when I see like certain behaviors in the first meeting of a couple. Men, for me, are pretty telling because they manifest in similar ways where you can tell that they had that, you know, mother raised them. And I don't mean like dad was around and involved, but maybe passively involved. I mean, most of the time it was single mother, or like you said, dad was the same way, just completely broken, and there, but checked out, which is almost worse in a way, because the young boy, you know, he craves that guidance from his dad, and his dad's physically there, but he never quite gets it. It's worse in a way, you know? But yeah, most of the time that's exactly the case. And it's even the case in like my personal life. I went through that same thing with my husband. So it's so prevalent. Single mother households, I think, are probably one of the worst dynamics for a boy to grow up in most of the time.
Agreed.
And it's not that, I don't mean to say, and I guess I'm careful because I don't want to alienate people. I'm sure there are some women really trying their best to like hit that mark and be both. And I think that would be incredibly hard to do. But I don't think it's possible. Like, you can't take the place of a dad. You just can't. A woman can't do that.
No.
You know? So it has lasting effects on them.
I have a couple of questions for you. You're a relationship therapist, so predominantly I'm assuming that most of your clientele are couples. Is that correct? Or do you deal with individuals as well?
I deal with individuals as well. So I mostly coach couples, but I do also individuals because I have a very masculine angle. So if I have a male client that sees a particular, for me, I think I fill that area or that space where he needs a masculine angle, but maybe feels a little threatened by some of the masculine coaches or therapists, right? Because there is that gray area there for some men.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, what I'm getting at here is, and I agree with everything you've said so far, but the guys, and I'm not a therapist, just by the way, and I'm not trying to be adversarial or confrontational here. I'm just looking at it from a little bit of a different angle, where we kind of jumped into this, and because your forte seems to be more couples, a lot of the guys out there where, yes, feminism, all the stuff you've said, they're pussified. is basically the word I would choose to use as a man.
Yeah.
These guys are pussies because their masculinity has been beaten out of them, driven down, all of that. And it's one thing when you have a relationship and they've had 5, 10, 20 years, however long together, whether they're married or they're just living together. To me, that's irrelevant. But there's a lot of guys, the ones I tend to encounter just online and I talk to, these are guys that don't even have relationships and they're lost because of all the things that you've just discussed, that Vince has discussed, that TJ's been talking about. And the angle I want to kind of backtrack just a tiny bit, because I think you and I are on the same page, but you're talking about guys who are in relationships and they want to be more dominant, whether it's in the bedroom or it's just in their life. Because for me personally, DS isn't just a bedroom activity.
No, absolutely not.
It's a mindset. It's how you view life. It's how you view yourself. It's how you view each other. Okay. How you were talking about getting rid of that power struggle at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And for me, most of the guys that may run across this video or are watching it now, they're not even in a relationship. And so coming at it from the, I got this pussified husband who's broken down, beaten down, and I'm trying to maybe help restore their relationship and get it where it needs to be. For me, and from some of the guys I've seen, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse because they haven't even gotten into the relationship because of all this stuff. And so would you say, based on your professional experience and your personal experience, that maybe for a lot of these guys, whether they find, you or someone like you, to deal with, I guess, the deprogramming, the we're going to unfuck your mind, so to speak, from where you've been fucked in the mind. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be better to do that if they're looking to get into a relationship to hopefully avoid future bullshit that a lot of guys are seeing?
Yeah, 100%. I think they're in a better position than those that have been in a relationship where they've got, several years behind them already, because the patterns of the
precedent's been set. Yeah.
And those patterns in the relationship are already ingrained in them. So the way that they respond and handle conflict and all of that are already kind of ingrained in that couple. So you have to break all of that back down and get to the bare bottom and build up their foundation from there. Whereas somebody who isn't in a relationship is in way better position to come into one with that kind of energy that's going to get him what he wants, get that dynamic that's going to be best.
Absolutely. And that's what I agree with you there too. What I liken it to when I go out and I date and I meet women, I like to call it, and this is crude, but it is what it is. I call it, I put my dick on the table. Okay. That I let them know who I am, what I'm about. This is what I'm looking for. These are the things I want. I've learned because of past errors, past trials and tribulations, and past suffering. I've learned, I've already done the time because I went through all this crap too. I went through it all. And I was like, wow, I've already done the time, so I might as well commit the crime. How I look at it. So I've realized for myself that, I did everything mom and dad said to do and what society said to do. And I had all of the outer metrics of success, with the wife and the house and all the shit. And yet at the end of the day, all I wanted to do was eat a shotgun.
Right. It's like being trapped.
Right. And so when I set it all on fire and burned it all down, that's when I decided for myself, with help from Vince, TJ to a degree as well, that I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to live my life on my terms. And that's where, like I said, I kind of...
What do you want?
What do you want? Which is another way.
What do you not want?
Well, that too. But I assumed I'm just gonna put my dick on the table, and if she doesn't like it, she'll walk out the door.
Yeah.
And if she likes it, she'll sign up for it. And at least from there, it's congruent and it's consistent because
Gotta
they
get it
already
autographed.
well, that too. But they get an idea of what they're in store for from the get-go. That it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
well, this guy's saying and doing this. And so for me at least, some of these things that you've already brought up that you and Vince, and again, I'm not trying to dismiss it or downplay it. It's like, no, it all makes sense because I've been there. I've been the guy in couples therapy going,
Yeah.
I've been that guy, and
I'm
it's just
sorry.
like, it's better to be that guy from the word go. It's better, whether your DS is a bedroom thing, it's a kink. I don't really like calling DS kink when you live it. It's
I agree. Yeah.
In my mind, that it's just like I'm dominant in the bedroom and I'm dominant in life. And so what you see is what you get. Either you're on board or you're not. And if you're not, that's okay because somebody else will be. And my experience has been that they're usually on board. They're just like, holy shit, They're
shocked by it. I'm sure it's a little refreshing.
Absolutely shocked by it. I've heard crazy shit fall out of women's mouth that they're just like, holy fuck. And, and it's not just the words because talk's cheap, but when they see it in action, and it can be something as simple as, hey, I want to meet you. Here's a day, here's a time. Are you available? Here's the place. And I've already laid it out. Just here's the place, here's the day, here's the time. And they're just like, oh my God, how refreshing is this? And I'm like, how simple is this though? It's not that hard to decide, well, Wednesday's not going to work for me because I'm on Masculine Geek talking about BDSM. But Tuesday will work because I ain't got shit going on after I get off work. It's one of the few days that I have open time, or I got a little bit of time on Thursday. So take your pick, which one. But I've already figured out where I want to go, what I want to do, and the times that work for me, because like TJ said, he's quoting me. What do I want? And that's, I don't know if you, God, I don't know if you help guys with that or coach guys on that or what your take is on that. And then that's why I was bringing up like the single guys, the guys that you're talking about relationships. But for some of these guys, a lot of these guys, they're going, well, this is all great and dandy, except I don't even have a woman in my life.
Well, not only that, but the lack of confidence and assertiveness is not just with women, I'm sure. It's in all aspects of their lives.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you made the remark about it being simple, it really is simple in theory. In practice is where it gets hard.
Not easy.
Yeah, because it's hard to watch when you have a man that is capable, because all of them are. And you see it and you just know that all you have to do is break down this societal conditioning and get them to see that, like, you can go back to that little boy on the playground that like pulled her pigtails, right? Like that's what you have to get him back to, rather than the little boy that was told you should never do that. Don't do that to Janie, right? Because that then is the broken down version that gets reinforced. And now he's an adult man who's afraid to rock the boat at all. He's afraid to take that lead because she might look at him as, or he becomes that little boy again that was told he was bad for what he did. And I think it gets reduced to that almost regularly. It's like that inner child thing where everybody goes back to that place where they were taught from the, foundational stuff. Little kids, don't treat girls that way. Don't be that way. And we're, in our generation specifically, I think it's one of the worst ones because like the boomers and everything that has come through. But
Fluff that.
But yeah, it's almost getting them back to that stage where they can, pull the pigtails.
Pull the pigtails and be playful, be mischievously playful with the girl.
And we want that. Like we really do want that. Even those that, I mean, it takes quite a man to break down a brat, and I am not a fan of brats.
I saw some of your posts, your response to one of those tweets about women being. Someone was commenting on women, specifically younger women, being a lot more bratty.
Yes, the one about fiction or the nonfiction, the books, the chick lit books.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because. And my point is that it takes quite a man to take a woman from that place, and because she's going to resist a lot.
Yeah. Well, fundamentally, an overly bratty chick is very masculine.
Yeah, I was that.
Yeah.
So that was me, and so when I wrote about that, like today when we were discussing that in the tweet about the chick lit. I came from that. So I read all of those stupid ass books and like had that programming in my head and was quite a bitch. I mean, I really was, there's no other word for it. There just isn't. And I definitely chewed up a lot of men and spit them out. And
was there a straw that broke the camel's back where you said, holy shit, I can't.
Yeah, I almost lost my husband. Yeah.
Okay.
He's a super strong, dominant guy, and just got to a point where he was really, really patient with me and worked with me and everything like that. And mind you too, I have 2 older brothers, a very strong father. So he was working with somebody who was used to that male energy being like, that's normal for me. Like I was picked on all the time. I'm, like I have 2 older brothers that were like very much involved in my life, and my dad.
What we would call a tomboy.
Yeah, completely. So, and then like the whole street growing up were all boys. I just was inundated with a lot of masculine energy growing up. So he had to work with that. And, it wasn't good. It was not good. And I praise him at this point for having the patience to put up with me and teach me a better way, and just look at the world differently. And that's where I also think like these guys are missing a beautiful opportunity, because you don't need the submissive up front if you're willing to see the qualities in her. And I tell people this too, like, that guy can be the dominant guy. It just might be a little work to get there, or a little encouragement, a little like, this is okay, I want to do this, right? A little freedom. The same for her though. Like nobody would have thought I was submissive. He saw that in me. So I definitely don't lead with that kind of energy. I'm sure you can tell that.
Yeah.
But he saw that, and it just, when he came in with that kind of energy that was so masculine that it made me feel like, oh shit, I don't need to like lead this. And
you
it was
don't need to take control.
Yeah. And it was so like, I mean, I would have done anything not to lose that.
So that therein lies the polarity that we talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why, one of the reasons why I believe in it so much. And then I have been very fortunate that he's got a great circle of guys, and they have let me in that circle where they tell me, share with me their inner thoughts and things that they're dealing with in their marriages. But I get to see that angle where I've already established rapport with them. So they're pretty vulnerable with me. And it's just collecting data from across the spectrum of men. And there's just these common themes. And I think that any of these guys, it's just that those steps to just regain that control, whether they're in a relationship or they're not. better if you're not. But if you are, you can get that back in your relationship, you know, and you can get it up front and establish it in your relationship. And if you do, I mean, to me, it's bliss. I mean, of course, things still come up. You still have hiccups and stuff like that. But the working functionality of the relationship is like so easy. And it's peaceful, really, to have that power struggle removed.
Well, you have those that bringing back to traditional gender roles. It's already you've put yourself into the box, as it were, but you've defined the parameters of the box.
Yeah.
And you've put yourself in there. So now it's like, oh, I can relax, and like you said, you can be feminine now.
Yeah, but that's kind of the luxury that we have, like modern relationships have, is you can define that box a little more freely than we used to be able to.
Exactly.
So it's like, take advantage of that opportunity, you know? It's just getting past the fear of doing that. Whether that's his fear of taking the lead or it's her fear of allowing that like step back for her, you know, if she's been leading the relationship for a while, or in the case of being a single guy, you know. For women, I think it's tough to lead in a submissive way and get a strong male. I think it's possible. And I know this is going to be not a popular opinion, but I feel like strong men need an equal counterpart of a very capable, strong woman that is able to take a backseat. That's ideal.
A supporting role.
Yes, I think, like, I see this all the time in Twitter, and it's this sort of perpetuating this, like, oh, always pick the shy girl that has, like, you know, she's like hanging out in the corner and like, oh, I don't want to talk to anybody. You know, it's like,
it's like pulling teeth with them to just get them to say a single word. You know?
And they act like, oh, this tigress is going to come out in the bedroom and she's going to just like, you're going to awaken this like goddess out of her. Like, come on, it doesn't work like that. You need to have the raw materials to start with. And even if she's a little feisty, that's a little more fun, at least, to tame that beast than to try to awaken one that's like, you know, a dead bitch.
Yeah.
My favorite response to the feisty, the bratty, is, "You're cute."
Yeah, adorable. Like that, you're like, that's bratty. Nah, you're like about a 4. You need to step it up if you're going to do anything with brattiness.
You gotta pump that feistiness up. That's rookie numbers.
Well, no, it's more, and again, it's context and, you know, relationship, woman, man, dependent. But I'm like, that's cute. Here's a toothbrush. There's the grout in the bathroom. Get scrubbing.
Yeah, see,
you know.
that would work on me, but I'm a service submissive, so that kind of thing works.
There you go. You know, everybody's a little different, but my favorite word, in the vernacular, is the word no.
It works very well with women.
It really does. You know, they're like, oh, I'm going to do this. No.
No, you're not.
Why not? Because I didn't give you permission. I didn't say you haven't earned it. No. Here's a toothbrush. There's the grout. Have fun.
And when we were talking about removing from the toolbox the attention, because let's say you get the resistance, because let's say she's not used to hearing no. So then you get, well, I'm going to do what I want. And then she goes and does what she wants. Well, then now you withdraw attention.
Exactly. Yeah, that is the best tool. That
so effective.
Yeah.
One of my favorites was tying her up to the bed, and she's like, "Oh yeah," and then going out in the living room and watching Netflix for a while. And
I love it.
And moan and carry on, and I'm just like, "Shut up! I'm watching TV."
I love it. Yeah, I mean,
that's context dependent. You know, there was something else. You know, there was a trust and a dynamic going on there.
Sure.
But she realized, you know, because I'm really good at sniffing out topping from the bottom. You know, I'm really good at figuring that out. That it's like, no. You say you're a submissive, but you're not. You know, it's like, yeah, no, you're not calling the shots. Yes, you and I have an understanding. Again, there's context. There is there's all kinds of nuance here that we're not getting into because that's going to be specific. It's going to be between one man, one woman, assuming a heterosexual relationship, because that's
I always do. So I do that.
Clarity.
So it is one of those things that, you know, that's how I suss out and sniff out people that are topping from the bottom, because I don't do that. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so it's like, oh, well, I'll tie her to the bed and go watch a couple of episodes of whatever I like while she's laying there blindfolded and tied up and wondering what the hell's going on. And consensually, but I will break her will. She'll be begging for my attention because I just removed it when I went out and watched TV. Or the toothbrush and there's the bathroom, there's the grout, have at it. You know, servitude isn't just something you do when you feel like it. It's
best when you don't feel like it. That's when it's best.
There you go. Perfect.
Otherwise it's not a punishment at that point. Yep.
No. Servitude is what you do whether you want to or not. You do it because you choose to, because that's what you signed up for. And so and withdrawing attention and giving them tasks that are unpleasant in their eyes. You know, me, I could care less. It's like, whatever. But I know what works, and the withdrawal of attention is the biggest one.
It is so big.
Well, and even outside the bedroom, you know, never mind you're doing a scene or whatever that you guys have come up with. Just the idea, for instance, of you text her good morning. She says hello, whatever, you know, texts you back. And just to see where she's at, just to fuck with her a little bit. You don't text her for another 12 hours, you know? And then when you do, she's right on it, you know. Oh my God, where have you been? I've been busy. What are you doing? Working. Yeah. You know, you have to have that mindset. The mindset's the word for all these guys in the chat and for the replay guys, because all these dudes that come on here, they love their lingo, they love their jargon. And so I have to throw out a buzzword, and that's mindset. You have to have the mindset that there's other women, you're busy, you got shit to do. And if she gets upset, that's okay.
Yeah, that's really the kicker right there. It's if she gets upset, it's okay. You know,
it is. It's not the end of the world. You're not going to die.
It can be good if she gets upset.
Absolutely.
Because then you can have that. Yeah, you can have an angle of that good sexual tension then too.
I was say there's some good positive tension there. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You brought up a couple good points with, back to like the single versus like the married guy in that case, right? Because you set that stage from the beginning as a single guy, where let's say you withdraw attention and you don't give that attention back until you get like that apology, or you get that like she's like kind of metaphorically crawling back, you know, in that minxy kind of way. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, you know, I think you really should bake me a dozen chocolate chip cookies for that, because that was really inconvenient what you did.
Yeah.
To me, that would have been like, I would have been so. Now I didn't get that with my husband, right? Like I'm telling you, some of the topping from the bottom thing, I did that because I wanted.
You did, of course, you did.
But I wanted to create in him what he never felt he had permission to do.
You're trying to model the behavior you wanted him to have.
Yes.
Yes.
And there was no other way to get that from him unless I said, society told you this is not okay. I'm telling you it's okay.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes,
you brought up a brilliant thing there that just gave me a whole different outlook of topping from the bottom. Wow. So thank you for that, because
I'm glad. Yeah, sir.
About
for
that,
me,
that you're trying to give him specifically, but I can see this. You can kind of generalize this a little bit. And yes, nuance and context for the idiots in the chat. But I'm looking at it going, you know, because I always just thought it was just kind of fucked up, you know, that it's just like, God damn it, you're not going to tell me what to do. You know, that's not how I roll. I already did all that. I'm not doing that anymore. But you brought up a good point there with the, you want him to take charge so damn bad that you're literally, you have to kind of take charge in order to give him the power. That it is it's okay. You know, it's okay. I want you to choke me out. It's okay. I want you to do this. It's okay. I want you to do that.
Yes. And you almost have to
get it now.
You have to and a couple points to what you were just saying. I think when that natural reaction for a man to be like, don't tell me what to do. I think if you had a particularly dominating mother, domineering mother, that's going to be your first reaction. So I don't know if you might have had a dominating mother.
That's your trigger button. Yeah.
I 10/10.
Don't tell me what to do.
If a man reacts instantly with that, like puffed up chest, like what, you know, that's, I can almost immediately tell he had a mother that was like constantly nagging him, berating him in his face, you know, total power tripping mother. So I figured that might have been the case with you, but
totally.
Yes. This is where I try to, and it's an unconventional thing in DS. People are very resistant when I tweet about it. But yeah, sometimes it's just a different way of looking at that topping from the bottom. Don't take the man that may display some weakness or some permissive qualities and rule him out. Because there's the possibility that you just need to give him permission. Like, just unlock that in him. Like, we, speaking of the way feminism kind of permeates everything, and we have DS where it's all that the Dom has to bring out and earn the submissive's trust and has to earn the submissive this and earn the submissive that. Well, we have to that has to go the other way. And it's so far leaning in the way of women that it's like, this is a way I think it needs to shift. We need to say, as submissives at times, it's okay for you to do that. I want you to do that. That doesn't take away our submissiveness, I don't think. I think there's a way you can ask for things. You can use, you know, certain words, you know, you can use, like, whether you say sir or master or daddy, I mean, whatever. But you can ask for what you want and still be submissive, and then it gives him that angle to step into his dominance more. Technically that's topping from the bottom. I get that.
One of the things I found interesting is, and I'm curious about how much you have to deal with this.
And TJ, when you're after your question, Robert has a question too.
Oh, okay. Is one of the things I noticed. Yes, I know for all you regular guys, I live in the Pacific Northwest, but this is, I think, something that's culturally significant to our section of the globe. Dork. Jersey.
I love you, TJ.
Living in the armpit of the U.S. Anyways,
that's right.
You know, you're talking about how, like, men feel like they have to ask for permission for stuff, and they get very concerned when a woman gets upset and all this stuff. In my area, my kind of impression is that when a woman gets hysterical, she has to be taken very seriously. Like, you have to take what she's doing at face value. Whereas what I've learned over the years is, like, it's on the surface. She's not really being serious. She's just having an emotional reaction to something. It's like if some girl is doing something and then some guy says the same thing, I'm going to take what the guy says a little bit, well, not in this area because they're all acting like women, but in some other part of the country, I'm going to take him a little bit more literally, as opposed to, like, yeah, it's like, that's nice, honey. Go make me a sandwich or something like that. So, like, how much of that is part of your work is, like, teaching men or not teaching men, but, like, explain to them,
guiding men,
guiding men to, like,
I like guiding.
Don't take what these gals say literally, and take it seriously. Where they're like really offended. I'm really offended right now. It's like, that's nice, and you know, you pat them on the head, and it's like, okay, that's cute. Like Rob said, it's cute. And instead of, like, blowing up, they kind of think it's funny.
You don't feed in. You don't feed into it.
Right. You don't feed into it, and that's the thing. Like over here in my area, you're supposed to. The official narrative is you have to feed into it. You have to keep feeding. You have to keep telling them that their feelings and emotions are correct. Like it's literally like this. The word of God is speaking through their emotions or something like that.
So I feel kind of twofold on this one. And I said feel for, specifically, like, I know if I hit a point of hysterics, which I try not to, but it does happen. And when it happens, I feel like it's particularly important that, number one, identify the feelings, like what he needs to do. Identify the feelings. Say, I understand that you're feeling this way. I do believe taking that serious to the extent of these feelings are what she is saying they are at this moment and this moment only. So they can be different 10 minutes from there, and you have the ability to change that trajectory. But at that time, when she says you're the worst man in the world or whatever, like
at that moment,
that is just in that isolated moment, and it's likely not really reality at all. And so don't take it serious as in internalize that seriously, but act like you're taking it serious. I understand you're upset at me right now, and I hurt your feelings. And then whatever solution needs to happen, or however if you identify and address the feeling in that moment and you don't hang on it too long, you can get her right through that hysterics and back into a normal functioning state 10 minutes later. So take it seriously, yes, but don't internalize it.
Don't take it literally. Yeah.
Yes. So I think a lot of men internalize it. And the reason, like, I hate to sound Freudian when I say this, but I think it really boils down to the mother. Because little boys get guilted by their mothers, get nagged by their mothers, get told that they're bad boys by their mothers. And this is like programmed in them from very young. So that feminine voice of you, and I'm sorry, like I do kind of have a bad mouth, but that feminine voice of like, well, you fucked up.
What the fuck?
Men internalize that really, really on a deep level. It like triggers them, to not triggers them in like a way where they react aggressively, but where they sink into themselves. So that I think is the main problem. If she's in hysterics and she's emotionally attacking, because that's what women do when they get into a hysteric state, they go right for the, jugular. So in that case, he then sinks into himself because he's receiving that criticism and that attack. And he is like, kind of wilting when he needs to be like, coming out of that. So take it serious and respond to it, address it, but don't hang on it.
Right.
Yeah. I think that that's the best thing, because it's, and that as a woman, I'm saying that like too on a personal level, like that's what works for me as well. I definitely don't think, whatever, like this is just you acting up right now, or that doesn't go well. Like for me, it wouldn't.
Yeah. Robert, you had a question?
Well, I was going to say, what's interesting is listening to all this and putting it into the context of my own personal experience. So much of this comes down to really basic biology and an understanding of biology. And I think we have moved past the point where for several decades now, we've kind of forgotten, purposefully maybe, that human beings are in fact animals.
Yep.
And there's a reason You know, there's a sexual dimorphism that males are larger than females, that males do certain things or have certain behavior triggers to attract mates, that we have instincts for mate guarding. But into some of the things you were talking about, you know, a man who grew up on a farm, you know, with dogs, and maybe he was a rancher and broke wild horses. There's so much just in behavioral modification in animals, in dogs, in horses, that
Yes.
on a macro level would be applicable in relationships as far as how you do things. I mean, and just talking as human beings, you know, they talk frequently about, you know, putting kids, you know, when they misbehave, in timeout. So you take that attention away from them, and you withdraw from them, and kind of, they're temporarily ostracized from the group or the tribe, to teach them that that's inappropriate behavior. And in order to come back into the group, you know, they have to change how they behave.
Mhm.
But now we live, especially, it's very obvious in the last couple of years, that you can't rely on biology, because now biology isn't science, it isn't fact, it's a social construct.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can't even define what a female is. You can't even describe men and women can get pregnant. I mean, that's what someone testified before Congress just in the last 24 hours. You know, birthing persons, you know, the change in the language. So if the science is no longer reliable, if biology is not a science now but a social construct, then all of these problems, that just a simple understanding of basic biology, and you know, and then adding upon that layers of evolutionary psych and other things like that, to understand how things work and how the organism works, all of that is purposefully being stripped away. So in my mind, the problems that we see in relationships between men and women are just going to become infinitely worse if this trend isn't, you know, a stop isn't put to it. And obviously for some of us on this panel are old enough that we're not going to see the eventual outcome, good or bad, because
I'm definitely not.
yeah,
don't
the number of
Right.
decades we have left on this planet are unfortunately less than the ones we've already lived.
Oh, we don't give a shit.
Yeah, but and plus,
Shut up,
some of us
DJ.
have skin in the game as far as the future is concerned, because some of us on this panel, at least one of us on this panel, is not only a parent but a grandparent. So, you know, things to think about. But it's just amazing how much of this just could be solved if we just understood a basic level of biology, just like some of our financial problems could be solved if we had just a basic understanding of economics. You know,
I 100%, like, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm huge on evolutionary psychology.
Yeah.
I think that it's not popular, and the number one reason why I feel like relationship wise it's not popular, and in therapy it's definitely not popular, is monogamy.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody likes the idea that monogamy is not natural. So that animalistic primal side, like, that we all have, it is there. I don't care how anybody wants to define biology, that is in all of us. When you talk about the kid, putting the kid in timeout, that's basically kicking the wolf out of the wolf pack until it comes back with the tail between its legs. It's the same thing, you know. But yeah, I think the reason why people like to reject it so much is it's that trigger with monogamy. And, you know, it's threatening to people to think, oh, if we're animals, then that means that we're not capable of monogamy. And if we're not capable of monogamy, then that means my husband's going to cheat on me. So there's no way that I'm going to embrace this.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't stop us as, you know, higher thinking animals to choose monogamy if that's what we choose, right? It's not like we're completely controlled by our primal brains, but to say that that's not a part of how we've evolved, that we're not still and on the base level an animal, I think that's like it. I'm with you. If we deny that, I can't see relationships improving at all, because we're just going to lose all rationality. I mean, to me, biology is rational. That's
it. Even before we had the internet, that's a big thing too. Is before we had the internet and this global socialization, our biology trumped all that. That was forefront in our dealings with everything. Was the natural order of things. Men were larger, stronger, faster in certain regards. Our job was to guard the perimeter. Our job was to slay the dragon. The woman, her natural biological drive and job was to have the children and nurture them until a certain point that the males took over and taught them the ways of the world. That for thousands upon thousands of years, that was the way of the world.
Yeah.
And then you've got technology, industrialization, making everyone softer and pushing us away, getting us further and further away from our biology. I was reading Alan Watts. He has an essay right. He has a book of essays called "This Is It."
I have it. It's in my library.
Yeah, I started reading it back when I was practicing Shaolin Kung Fu. I was getting back into Zen and reading a lot of that stuff. And I come back to it, and I was reading his one essay on anxiety. And he was talking about how anxiety was on the rise back in the 70s. And he equated it to the options that we had, the inability to decide on what to do. Too much information coming in. Like the Bible says, he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. That might be Ecclesiastes, I'm not sure. So the more knowledge you have, the more potential sorrow you can have. Obviously, you can say, like Rob would say, I don't give a fuck, and I'm going to whatever. That's true too. But if you're not self-aware and you've got this like fire hose of information and options and almost limitless ability to decide different things, that you shut down and you start to withdraw from your instinct. The ability to be in touch with your body and let your instinct take over without all the other external stimulus coming in is what drove us to success, if you will. Now we have this technology making us softer. We have all these options. I mean, George Carlin talked about this. Walk down any supermarket aisle in the cereal aisle, and there's 60 different fucking cereals.
Yeah, it's choice anxiety.
Exactly.
Different brands of toothpaste and
Exactly. So now you have this anxiety because you're not only are you like, what do I choose? Well, what did my neighbor or my friend or my family choose? Are they going to look at me different? Now, obviously, we say, well, I wouldn't, no, I don't care what anyone thinks, but we do care what people think. That's a lie. We do care. We do care what people think, whether it's a different part of us, or it's our friend, or it's what we think society might want us to comport ourselves in. We still care what the external world thinks to some degree.
This last 2 years has proven that. I mean, it's shown us in black and white.
Exactly. But now that we have all this information overload and trying to decide what the right route is, it has lended itself to this anxiety. I'll bring it back to a personal anecdote. I was one of my favorite waitresses at my favorite wine bar that I go to. She's studying to be a sommelier. And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. That sounds like it'd be fun, right?" Like, well, what's your favorite winery to go do tastings? And she stopped for a minute and she said, "Well, this is embarrassing. I've never gone to a tasting." And it was almost at that point where my jaw literally hit the floor. Like, wait, could you repeat that? Like, wait, what? And I started to I teased her a little bit. So I said, all right, well, I go at least once a month and do a wine tasting in different locations in New Jersey. Like, you know what? You're going to come with me. Put your number in my phone. And she's like, oh, really? Oh, she put her number in the phone, and we talked back and forth for a while. And during our textual conversation, she doesn't drive because she got into an accident, and she has a high level of generalized anxiety. Like, think of myself, where the fuck does that come from? And I thought back to this essay that Alan Watts was writing, but this was like an issue back in the 70s that's slowly been building with the advance of technology and the soft, lazy life that we live, and the too many decisions that we find ourselves faced with, and also not allowing, like Robert was saying, our biology, not allowing that instinct to help drive us. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
no, it does. It does make sense. I think it was Alan Watts too, that, and I don't remember if it was in This Is It or another book, but he had said that for people who convince themselves that they are not manipulated by society or influenced by society, they literally use the very words that are in place because of society's influence on what those words mean. So like, if you're breaking it all the way down, yes, we all care to some degree. Saying I don't care what people think and whatnot literally removes our sense of community from us. And as humans, we want a sense of community. I think that's natural. But yeah, to this anxiety, like she wouldn't be able to have the luxury of having like this fear of leaving her home if she was having to rely on leaving her home to actually, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly, yeah.
Conduct her life. And, you know, now we can rely on technology to do that.
Yep. And then when that harms us in some way, that technology, whether it be the car or whatnot, that's
or the phone, any of that.
Exactly. That's debilitating. I think it's detrimental.
Yeah. And one of the areas that when we're talking about primal, I can't help but to think about, like, if we deny that animal biology, like the deep animal in us, like we are totally alienating a phenomenal part of our sexuality. Mm-hmm. Like, what a sad thing to deny, because some of the most delicious sexual, you know, encounters you can have are the primal ones, like the ones that are just pure animal drive, and, you know, like those are some of the best.
Well, that's why you see I've noticed on a lot of the BDSM sites that I'll sandbag. I don't partake in them too much, but I like to see what the conversations are being had, and like what's being posted up in the blogs and in the videos and such. This idea of the consensual non-consent is a huge thing. I was first, the idea that was first brought home to me back in, and we've talked about this before on our show, when I was in college, the by Nancy Friday, My Secret Garden, and it was this woman who decided that she wanted to find out women's sexual fantasies, what they thought about, what they fantasized about, and basically,
yes. Okay, yeah,
yeah, their inner secrets, as it were, My Secret Garden. Mm-hmm. And one of the main recurring fantasies was rape. Rape.
Yeah.
Now, not the rape where there's some stranger in a ski mask that jumps out of a bush and then takes the woman and then hurts her and beats her. Not that.
Yeah,
but
right.
The man that she loves and admires, who
she feels safe with otherwise.
She feels exactly. She feels safe with otherwise. That tells her no, that holds his frame. That's just going to say you're not even saying anything, but just animalistically, like being a werewolf
energetically.
Being a werewolf, or like a werewolf in a fucking necktie, and
Mhm.
bending her over and
Oh, I
having
love
his way.
that. I love
They're
that.
also like neckties.
You like that?
Yeah.
Just having his way with her, not
Sounds
even
like a
fucking.
romance novel.
I know, right? I have to do that one. I'll have to do that one.
There's a whole genre of some wear erotica out there.
Well, I heard about the whole Bigfoot, the Bigfoot rape stuff. That's like what? Apparently, that it was written by a
there
woman.
was a Primal Rage. Primal Rage, actually a pretty good movie. Not gonna lie, I think it's on Netflix. If it's a little B-rate, but it's pretty good. And there's a Bigfoot rape scene in there.
Wow. Bigfoot rape scene.
Just saying, if you're bored,
That's fantastic. Well, it's a niche that can be lucrative, and I'm thinking about delving into that.
But yeah, maybe it's just, again, we're just trying to get back to that we have that desire to get back to an animal, like to understand what biology really is, like that natural state that, we're just trying to get back to that. We're all so lost.
Yeah, it's very true. That's another thing when I mentioned a lot about the Gorean, getting back to make Gorean households.
I know,
great.
I love it when you do that.
Yeah, like it just when I read the books, and because he was a professor at Princeton, philosophy professor. I'm still waiting to hear back from him. I have several emails out there. I wound up finding his address in Long Island. His school address and sending in some email because I want to get him on the show. I want to have a John
that would
Norman
be
or John,
so neat,
right? Yeah. John Lang, but just to talk about his philosophies, and he understands women's nature and men's nature very well.
Mm-hmm.
Very well. It's been beaten out of us over the decades that men because this is something I remember Zan Perion saying, like men go out into the land of women and we thrust out into the world. We have a dick, we thrust. Women have a vagina, they receive.
We receive, yeah.
That is the biological bottom line. Mm-hmm. And that is the foundation of everything. And once you're aware of that, and you're aware of that both respectfully to yourself and the world, and you act accordingly, things start falling into place. You see things differently.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I had seen recently, and this tied in with something that was said earlier, it's interesting, how so much of what you're saying ties in so well with what gets called a tradcon, a traditional conservative woman, and then in the flower print dress and the sun hat and everything. But they would be shocked and dismayed that they have so much, they'd be suffering the vapors that they have so much in common with you. But when you get down to it, there are certain basic universal truths amongst us that stem from our biology that whether like it or not, that doesn't change. It doesn't change if you're a Marxist. It doesn't change if you're a Republican or a Democrat or whatever. It is because it's biology. Mm-hmm. And speaking within the realm of fiction, obviously the whole the women in the red dresses and the white hats.
Handmaid's Tale.
Handmaid's Tale. Yes,
Handmaid's Tale,
I purposefully blocked that from my mind. It has almost reached a point where it's almost like a fetish. And someone posted something on Twitter that I thought was really amusing, and it very quickly vanished from Twitter. But it's like, your husband just wants to make me have his baby, and
she was projecting.
The woman's like what? And you're going to hold me down while your husband forces himself on me, and he's while you're holding me down, and it's just this basic rape fantasy. Where the wife is holding the girl down while the husband takes her and inseminates her, and she's like all sweaty and excited and moist over it, and it's almost reached that level of classical word hysteria and fetishization with a certain demographic of women, and it's like, is this something you're worried about, or is this your fervent, sexual desire, just hoping that will come to fruition?
A little bit of both.
Because, and of course, most of the women I see talking about it would, could only dream of yeah. Anyway,
I love seeing people when the and I don't want to like get on the topic, but when the whole abortion thing was going, when it was like super big and still is, I understand, but when it was like really big in Twitter, plenty of women were bringing up Handmaid's Tale and like, see, that's how men would want it. It's like a woman wrote that. So get off of that being a man's thing. Like that is somehow a man's projection and this is a man's idea of ideal, because that was a woman's idea and women love that show. I don't see men gathered around watching Handmaid's Tale.
They love the idea of being forced to bear the children of a man that they find sexually attractive.
Yeah.
It's them on the surface pretending like it's their deepest fear and their deepest desire. Their deepest fear is, I'm going to be forced to bear the child of a man that I consider to be a loser. But what it actually is my deepest desire is to be forced to bear the child of a man that I consider to be like what alpha, Chad, whatever you want to use. But the whole point is like it's like this weird fantasy where they want to be forced, but they're not being forced. Like it's all superficial. Like, he forced himself on me. It's like, yeah, he's a pretty good-looking guy, and you weren't protesting, and you don't seem that devastated by the fact that he forced himself on you. As one guy told, or not one guy, one gal told me, she goes, there's no romance novel I've ever read where the guy was nice to the gal and got laid.
Right? No. Yeah, definitely not.
They're all bodice, they're all him ripping her clothes off,
ripping off her bodice.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is with Handmaid's Tale recently, just in the last 48 hours, I guess a homosexual couple posted their birth announcement, and it was two gay men standing in the foreground, holding hands, embracing, with the pregnant woman in the backdrop. And someone photoshopped the Handmaid's Tale outfit on her because it's like, you want Handmaid's Tale, that's where you get it. And that wasn't from, the cis patriarchy or anything like that.
Yeah, right.
So, but anyway, so enough of that horrible book and the TV shows that have been spawned from it. I'd like to let's get back to your speciality if we can. So
yeah, but yeah, you made a good point too. Like when it comes to TradCon, I feel like I struggle with it sometimes because I do definitely have very like traditional values, but then I have like the science type mind, and then I have the DS dynamic, and it's weird. There's not a community there. It's like this, I'm sure you guys can relate to. It's just kind of like this middle ground that everything branches off from. And I'm just kind of existing there in the middle, because I've had people from like, the trad community, and I obviously have trad in my name. So they embrace that aspect of me, or drawn to me for that. They just ignore the taboo part, I guess. But, they're drawn to me for the traditional side of things. And then they see that I don't believe that monogamy is a natural state. So then it's like, oh, unfollow. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's a weird thing in this world right now where everybody has to be so polar. And it's so extreme. And even in the community of DS, I see it as it's getting very extreme there too. Yeah, and I don't even embody that very much, because I do believe that everybody has masculine and feminine energies. It's just to what degree we have them and how much of that we allow to like, I guess, dominate us or like form our decisions, or how we project ourselves onto the world. I have some masculine energy. Some of you guys, I'm sure, have a feminine energy in you, whether you're excellent nurturing fathers or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like those sides of us exist. To deny
Well,
it
that's it.
is ridiculous.
Well, that's true. I mean, a woman wants to know that she can be with a man that can kill and then turn around and hold a baby.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you said that. Because I see a lot of things in the red pill community where it's, oh, women love bad boys. Women love a criminal. No, I mean, some do. But to say women love a criminal and we love bad boys, no, we love a man that's willing to do bad things if necessary.
But he has the self-awareness to keep that in check.
Yes.
He has the capacity to fuck you up, whether that's an enemy or you, put you through that drywall.
Yeah.
But he chooses not to.
Not to.
He reins that in.
Yeah.
Yep. This goes back to the whole primal forcing the consensual non-consent. This is from a FetLife profile from years ago, but it's still poignant. So if you read the but on the flip side, I'm taking this a little out of context, but if you can read the whole thing, but on the flip side, but on the flip side, I fantasize on being taken control of by a man, all primal, raped, bound, tied up, gagged, and forced orgasmed over and over at his will. This is very, very. I'm seeing more and more of this. This is not an anomaly. No.
I know I speaking from personal experience too, not just professionally, but friends personally, female friends, that's a common thing. I mean, that's regular.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of feeling comfortable enough to do that. One, but also admit it and not feel like vulnerable, I guess. I think a lot of women struggle with that.
There's safety. Yeah.
Even to their own husbands or whatever, because or boyfriends, whatever. I think they just feel like they might be judged for having that kind of fantasy, and then they don't even play in it at all. And there's a lot of missed opportunity there.
I agree. Which is weird because I know a lot of much, if not all, slut shaming comes from females, not men.
Yeah.
Men. Why would it? Why? Just common sense. Why would a man slut shame a woman? He wants to get laid. He's not going to slut shame a woman.
Well, with the exception of like some of these red pill accounts are like that, where it's like, oh, her body count, this, that, and the other. Like if she if she's not a virgin, she's not worth marrying or something, like stuff like that. So I guess it exists on that level, but yeah, most of the time it's women, it's women.
Well, my whole exactly. My whole thing with the body count is yes, that plays a little bit part as far as like emotional bonding, but I'm not worried about her past so much as how she's comporting herself in my house under me. Is she treating me well based on how I'm guiding her and leading her? If she is, I don't fucking give a shit about her body count.
Yeah.
I really don't.
I mean,
well, and it also depends on the kind of relationship you want, as far as.
Well, yeah. I would say if I was going to marry someone, if a woman had like, oh, I fuck 600 dudes, that might be like, I might be nauseous at that. I probably would not marry her.
There's a psychological component there that you have to bring in, like what's going on to need that much dick.
If I'd say also it's not so much the, for lack of a better word, it's not so much the number, but like, is there a guy in the past that left an impression on her that she's never going to get over? Because if you're the guy that she's like,
well, that's what I mean by how she's treating. That's what I mean how she's treating me. I mean, if there's a disconnect there, then obviously that's not going to last long just by its very nature.
If she's setting rules for you that she didn't set for some guy in the past, that's the red flag. Like the number
I can see that.
of distraction. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Indeed. All right, we're coming up on the 1.5 hour mark already.
Wow.
Oh shit, that was indeed very quick.
Like the 1930s movie, you know, 1.5 hours.
Indeed.
Yeah, that is a little strange. When you were talking about the biology and the natural drives, masculine and feminine drives, I never had the drive to have kids, ever. Never hit me.
Yeah, some women don't.
Yeah, that never hit me at all. I always knew from the time I was little that I didn't want anything to do with that. I knew I wanted to be a wife, and I wanted to be really good at that. And I wanted to be like I knew I wanted to be like the goddess for him. You know what I mean? And do all the domestic stuff and be just like this. I don't know how to describe that other than like the domestic goddess in a way, but embody like that with all the sexual side and all of it. But I just didn't want kids at all. That never hit me. And I mean, I'm 37, so I think it would have happened by now, you know. It's just not a drive I ever had. So it's kind of weird. Because I do agree, like I'm very heavy on evolutionary biology and stuff. I wonder why just some of those things just don't. Because I don't think that's all, you know, nurture. I didn't I wasn't turned off by it by like my socialization, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. There are always exceptions, but the exceptions are not the majority. They're exceptions because they prove the rules. They are the extremes on either end where you have, you know, the median numbers that are different. So, I mean, I know my own personal experience. I've known several women that wanted kids, but they wanted their careers first, then they were going to have kids. And then, but that desire for kids changed over time. Whereas, wow, I can't believe I wasted 20 years of my life on this career, even though, you know, I'm an executive and now I have this kid and I wish I would have started having the kid thing 20 years ago, you know, so.
But I guess that also brings in like there's gotta be then, of course, the male that doesn't lead with masculine energy is in fact very submissive, still like a straight male, but submissive, in which case a very dominant female would be a good match for him. You know what I mean? So it's like these weird things where I'm always careful to say that it's always this way. I tend to, you know, that it's masculine and feminine energy is this way, and it's always this, you know, dynamic. But there are those exceptions where it would be the outliers that
I do have a question with those outliers, with the more dominant female and submissive male. Do you, in your experience, I mean, do you follow these relationships? Do you see them playing out well, or do you see them like eventually the woman being resentful and saying, this isn't working for me? Because I remember reading, I'm obviously, this is anecdotal, it's just one book, but I remember reading this one. It's called Dungeon Evidence. I think it's part 2. It's about this Domé and her it's basically her journal, doming men.
Okay.
And someone asked her, like, all right, well, yeah, this is, you know, what these submissive men and you're a Domé, like, what do you think of that? Well, they're fun to play with, but I could never marry or see myself in a relationship with one because the man at that point, he has no dignity. I can't look up to that. Her words. I can't look up to that. So
I've only seen one that I did not, where I didn't observe that she was resentful of him.
Okay.
Only one. So, but that could just be based on like the people I deal with generally, you know.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But yeah, I think deep down, I can off the top of my head think of in my personal life with my friends. I can think of a situation where very headstrong female. Her husband's a little more permissive, and deep down, when I get to talking to her, just between the two of us, there's definitely a resentment there that he is the way he is, but she never tells him that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's operating
my,
behind the scenes in a lot of people's relationships.
Yeah, that was my surmise. I mean, obviously, it's hard to quantify that because you're not talking to everybody, but you have a sense of it when you come across it. You're like, yeah, there's something fishy here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, all right, we're going to go into a very brief Q&A from the chat. We've pretty much been, for the most part, ignoring you bastards in the chat. We've done that deliberately so we don't ruin the flow between our guests and ourselves.
Some for very good reason, but
yeah, some of you fuckers are, I'm not sure, like you're sitting there with your pants down around your ankles with your dick in your hand. So if you have a question that's not retarded or spurgy, feel free to throw it up in the chat and we'll see if M can answer it as best as she can. And don't wait on this.
How long have you been at this, by the way? While we're waiting for the chat to ask something intelligent, how long have you been at this? Obviously, you spent quite a bit of time in school.
So 6 years in school, like higher education, college. Only 2 years outside of it, though. So not very long.
Okay. It sounds like you're enjoying it, though.
Love it.
Yeah, right?
Love it. Yeah, I definitely went through a bit of that time when I was in school where I was like, what did I do? You know, because it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. But then when I decided, well, I could take this whole other angle and do it this way and have it work for me, where clients can pick me if they feel like I'm a good fit for them. It's so much better than going to a therapist where they say, you know, they just sit and back and you have no idea where they're coming from, who they really are, what's going on. And the thing is, yeah, we're not supposed to impart upon the clients anything, you know, anything about us. But who really does that?
That's almost impossible.
I went to the school that I went to is a like Christian university. I am not Christian, but it was convenient. So I went to it and I thought it would be kind of fun because I could get in kind of arguments with people and have a good time with it. But one of the things that happened that really bothered me was we were supposed to evaluate our biases, and we were supposed to discuss this in like a group forum about what our biases are and how they would potentially impact a client, or how we would or could potentially impart that on a client through, you know, therapy. And none of them said they had a religious bias. None of them. Like, it didn't occur to them at all. And I was sitting there listening to them say, oh, well, you know, like I'm a cat person. So I think if somebody was, you know, really into dogs, I would definitely think that they had, you know, maybe they had dependency issues, like weird shit like that. But then nobody says that they have a religious bias. So you're going to a Christian university and most of those for the reason because it's a Christian university, but you don't have any religious bias, nothing against homosexuals. You have nothing against, you know, like, really? And then you're going to enter the field with that kind of like view of yourself, or you can't even be that honest with yourself. And you're going to somehow be able to, you know, treat a client with some level of like authenticity, I guess. Like, how do you do that? So I just decided like there's no way I was going to lead with that kind of, be a part of that kind of world where I could be somebody that has those kind of biases operating under the surface, and somehow convince myself that I'm not going to project that in some way. That's a huge lie. I don't know how anybody could do that. So
Mhm.
I'm leery of therapists for that reason.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah.
We do have a question. I'm not sure if Nick August Liquor Cabinet fan club. I'm not sure if he's trolling or not, but I'll read it anyway. Is there a line during dirty talk? My opinion, no. All women want to be treated like a whore.
I'd have to agree. I don't think there is. I think there could be a line on certain words. Like some women, you obviously don't like the word cunt, right? So like some women, you stay away from that, you know. But outside of certain words, I don't think there's a line. I think the dirtier the better.
Dirtier the
right?
better, yeah.
I think there can be lines on like some stuff, like if somebody crossed a line with like with me, for instance, on a personal level, if somebody was like doing some weird mommy type shit, that would bother me. So I think it can that way, but as far as like demeaning kind of language, I think there's no line there. Personal.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much dating experience would you say one should have before getting in a DS dynamic? So how much dating experience? I don't think you need to have a lot. I think you can develop in the dynamic together. You make the dynamic what you want it to be together. You do not have to have experience. No amount of experience is going to necessarily, whatever you came into the relationship with, is going to necessarily make you better. You might be better at being dominant in ways that you're not having to learn from scratch. But if as a couple, you're learning that stuff together, you don't need to have a bunch of dating experience for that. I don't think so.
I got a question.
I agree with that.
What are your thoughts on, you're counseling a couple that's not married, so there's no permanent commitment, as opposed to where there's a marriage involved? Because I remember a buddy of mine, he was dating a gal and they were going through counseling, and I kind of thought, isn't that kind of a sign that you're not compatible, like time to split up type of thing? It was one of those classic, the guy was being passive or whatever, but it was like, well, why are you paying all this money to go to counseling when you're not
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think like my first question would be, what kind of hangups does he have around the commitment? Because maybe it's not about the quality of the relationship, but maybe he saw his parents get divorced and they had a nasty divorce, and as a result, he's got a fear of marriage itself, but otherwise he's equally committed to her on the level of a marriage, in which case it makes sense that they would go to couples therapy if they were having issues, right? So I think like it totally depends on their situation, because there's some people that are just really messed up on the idea of marriage, but they're committed to their relationships, sometimes more so than married couples are. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You ever had any couples that well, let's let the chat have their question.
Yeah, let's go into the chat. So what are some ways a man can escalate a relationship into the DS territory without making a woman feel uncomfortable?
So I get asked this question a lot. I would say stop being so concerned about her being uncomfortable. So we can kind of on some level trust, with the exception of, like, I obviously got to be careful because some people are real creepy, but most people understand energetically what is okay and can read situations and say, this might be a little too far at this stage. This is safe. Being afraid because of her, like, possible rejection or whatever, my advice would be eliminate that as much as you can. If you're feeling fear about introducing it little by little and just getting yourself into that dynamic and you're fearing it, try to change your state of mind, because those thoughts of fear are going to project into how you're dominant, like how you're showing up as a dominant in your relationship. So whatever your thoughts are, your energy is. So if
that'll
you
show up
are,
in your body language too.
yes, absolutely. So
Yep.
if you fear, oh, she's going to be uncomfortable, then you're going to have this timid kind of like, okay, I'm going to spank you now. And then like, but it's not like real good. And so that it just doesn't come across with that same energy. And then that's a turnoff.
Mhm.
So I would say worry about it less. Worry about her comfort less.
Stop asking questions and start making statements.
Like, and again, like, there's obviously a line to that, but I think we should be able to say, worry about her comfort a little less. She can speak up for herself too and say, that was a little bit too much for me. Don't be afraid of hearing that. If it's like if you go and spank her and she's like, oh, I don't like that. Well, then you probably, if you want DS, then you probably should see that as a warning.
That's the wrong chick. That's the wrong chick.
Yeah,
to be
exactly.
With, yeah. Next.
Yeah. So if she was uncomfortable, well, then it was just a spanking, then move on, Stop worrying about her so much.
Yeah, worrying about a woman's comfort level is should be very low on your priority. I'm not saying I always liken it. I always say to myself is I care, but I don't.
Yeah, like you're cognizant of it.
Exactly.
You're cognizant of it. You're respectful of it. Like that's the thing. I think if we're speaking more masculine language, right? Stop worrying about being of her comfort level and just have and maintain a level of respect. Because most men understand that, respect is like paramount. If you give her a spank and like you're wanting to introduce in kind of baby steps into DS, you're not going to haul off and spank her and be like, yeah, dirty whore, right? Like that might be a little bit too much. But you give her a spank, see how she responds, then like maybe she makes a noise and she liked it or whatever. Now that's good. Now you move on to the next thing. But you maintained a level of respect there. But comfort, like, the comfort thing, like, she's got to be responsible for herself on some level too. This whole like submissive, you got to be so careful with your submissive and earn your submissive's trust and all of this.
I know. I can't. Oh God, that commercial bullshit. I can't stand it. It's just ridiculous. I just gave up one for that. She was just too intellectual. I'm independent. I own my own company. I too much into her head, and I just like this running talk that you're having while we're engaged in activities. I just stopped it and just too much work. I stopped and I kicked her right the fuck out. I'm like, no, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
Not doing this.
Real quick, I just want to add something. This is like a major point of contention for me, and I've gotten in a lot of arguments about this uncomfortable stuff when it comes to women. We are capable of saying what we're comfortable with and what we're not. We also should be pushed outside of our comfort zones to some degree, and we need to do that because nobody's doing that. Nobody's making us do that. Nobody's encouraging us to do that. Everybody's saying, you're great, you're a woman, everything you do is wonderful. If you're fat, that's wonderful. If you're this, that, whatever, that's wonderful. You're perfect as you are. We need to have that level of like push. So one area where this is coming up all the time is with initiating sex and showing genuine physical sexual desire for our partners. Like it always has to be the man doing that stuff, and that women can't initiate because a submissive can't do that without being dominant. Bullshit. Like I'm so tired of seeing that. So stop worrying about women being uncomfortable. We have to be responsible for our own boundaries. And worrying about a woman's boundaries all the time is only going to permit her to not set them for herself.
Correct. And I want to add to that. It goes back to what I said at the beginning of the show about putting my dick on the table. Okay. I tend to push, I guess, or escalate, whatever buzzword you want to use. I lay it out here, there. Here's who I am. Here's what I want.
Rob, real quick. That's the title of your memoir.
What, putting my dick on the table?
Putting my dick on the table, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine. Okay, there, I have a title for the book I'll probably never write, but okay. So I always tend to, I would rather get blown out by being, I wouldn't call it too aggressive because I'm not forceful. I'm not domineering. I'm just honest that it's like, here I am. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to do. And one of the things for me, for instance, when I first meet a woman, we'll sit down, we'll banter, we'll bullshit, we'll have a drink, a few laughs. We talk about all the bullshit that everybody talks about. So what do you do for a living and what are you looking for?
The resume stuff.
Yeah, all that bullshit. Okay. And it's fine. It's small talk. It's part of what we do. It's social interaction. And then I kind of just lay it out there. This is who I am. This is what I want. This is what I'm willing to do. This is what I'm not willing to do. And she either accepts it or she doesn't. And sometimes they're a little on the fence. They're a little like, oh, I don't know about all this. And it's like, and that's fine. And if you don't, I've had plenty of women that are like, nope, not for me. It's like, okay, goodbye. Okay. But
yeah.
I always end up doing towards probably the end of the evening, depending on the vibe, because sometimes I can tell, yeah, she's not into it. So fuck it. Who cares? But other times, she's a little on the fence or, she kind of seems into it. I'll just be like, come here, and I'll fucking pull her in and I'll kiss her and see how that feels. I'll get, does she kiss me back? Is it flat like it's kissing my mom? Or is she into it? Okay. And it usually shocks them. It usually surprises them. And when I'm doing that, I will also grab her ass while I'm doing that. Okay. And if she's too uptight and pulls back or whoa, buddy, what are you doing? Then I know for me, she's not for me. That it's like, oh, you're not there yet. And that's fine. My bad. Goodbye. But or if it falls flat, it's like, oh, I just kissed my mom or I just kissed one of my cousins or something that it's like, yeah,
it's a real good indicator how she responds to something like the ass grab, right?
Because
even if that might be a little forward, you want the woman that's like,
I would rather be forward than pussyfoot around. But that's
but what I'm saying is
wait for permission.
But you want the woman that like playfully kind of tells you maybe not yet, but is still like open and like receptive, because that's the type of woman that's going to be open and receptive to trying new things or being pushed outside of her comfort zone.
Oh yeah.
But also
you're
capable of setting boundaries. Yeah.
It's like fun when it's fun for me when I meet a woman and I start talking about like being dominant and submissive, and they kind of look at me like, huh? And I explain a little bit to them that, it's not in the bedroom for me. It's a lifestyle thing. And it's funny to watch them kind of do this for a minute, but then, the date went well, the kiss was fine, whatever. But then they go home and they start Googling the shit. And then they start throwing the vernacular back at me that it's like, oh, you're interested. Because if you weren't, you wouldn't have bothered. And so I get these women that turn around and they're like, oh, this is what DS is according to Hoyle or whoever. And, I
feel like, oh man, what a disaster. Because
almost,
Not quite though, because I get it that, it could be because of all the shit that's out there. But, that's where I tell them, not quite, and it's just like, let's go out again and I'll tell you more. And they usually agree. And so we go out and it just goes further down the rabbit hole.
When you say it's outside of the bedroom, 100%, like that's what I think is missing when people start Googling DS. Like the best parts of it really do exist outside of the bedroom, the fun you can have
totally.
with the dynamic in public spaces, or
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
even in when you guys are apart and you can do things like, you know, journaling, for instance, gives people a lot of like play. You can do a lot of things with that. But one of the areas for me personally that I think women would benefit so much if they would just open up to it is women do need to kind of have that fire stoked all day. If let's say you're planning on having sex that night and you don't want to have all of this like revving up, and you keep her engaged through the day through tasks that appeal to that submissive side of her. And that submissive side of her is ultimately connected to sexuality. It keeps her connected all day long. So you can have a woman that's doing your dishes and literally being turned on at the idea of doing your dishes because she's submissive, like she's submitting to your will.
She's pleasing you. Yeah.
Through the dishes.
Yep.
And that's like the missing component that when you start Googling DS and you start seeing, you know, stupid wrist restraints and silky blindfolds and shit, that it's like, well, that's such a small part of it, you know.
Oh, of course. And again, nuance and context. You know? But the fact that she didn't just dismiss it outright, that she had to go and peek around and see what the hell I was talking about. And then she didn't just run off or block me or whatever. She actually
that's a good sign.
She's like, hey, you know, I was looking at, you know, I was reading 50 Shades of Grey. Hold on, honey. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Put that trash down.
Right. Put it down. But the fact that she went there a little further, that it's like, well, she's curious. She wants to know more. So come sit down and let me tell you a tale. You know, that's how I look at it. And that's what I mean by, you know, she went and Googled it or whatever. It's a terrible idea if you're going to be in monochromatic binary thinking. But it's the fact that she showed an interest, that it's like, oh, you're somewhat interested. Otherwise, you wouldn't be bringing this up to me. You'd have just been like, why, you're a weirdo and I'm out. Instead, you're like, oh, you're curious. Now, let me tell you about my experience. Let me tell you what I know based on my experience, based on Vince's experience, based on a bunch of other people's. And then it's just a matter of, okay, she's either in or she's not. And if she's not,
and that's where all the fun can start to, you know, you can start having all that fun. Like it's that's where, you know, when we're talking about this single guy that's just getting into the relationship, like don't let that discourage you, because you have the opportunity to have so much fun just right off the bat, rather than having to kind of deconstruct your relationship and then build it back in the framework.
And you brought it up because and it goes back to where I was asking about, you know, should the single guy get his shit wired together basically before he gets involved? I bring it from the beginning so they have an idea of who I am, what I want. So there's no misconceptions, there's no misunderstandings in that sense. So they either accept it and say, yep, I'm in, or they don't, which is fine. But either way, I'm not having to deconstruct or build or do it in gradual steps, because this is normal. This is natural in my world, at least.
But even the guy that is just entering into DS, like you obviously you're in it, you are experienced in it. But even the guy that's just, you know, just starting to kind of dabble in it, even he has a lot of opportunity, and you guys can grow in the dynamic together, so long as the openness is there, the willingness is there, the playfulness is there. And honestly, one of the biggest things that I think is creativity. I think your level of possibility within your sex life is almost inextricably linked to your level of creativity, whether you yourself are creative or you have the capacity to visualize and like imagine and lose yourself in a novel or something like that, right? I really think that it's connected. If you've ever, maybe off the top of your heads, can think of two people that were non-creatives or not, you know, at all like interested in creative things, whether it's movies, whatever. They're just kind of like non-creatives. They probably had a shitty sex life.
Boring. Yep.
Yeah, because you have to be willing to like think of things, and like that's why I always say geeks have they're the best ones to get involved with. Best ones, because their imaginations are just like full of delight.
Absolutely. And on that, and that what an excellent statement to end on too.
Yep.
All right, we're coming up. We're 3 minutes from a little under 3 minutes from the 2-hour mark, and I don't want.
Well, this was so much fun. Thank you so much.
For having absolutely, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to round 2.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love to. It's been so much fun. Thank you guys.
Excellent.
All of you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
No, where can everyone find you?
I'm so bad with social media, so I only have Twitter, and I think it's at @m_trad taboo. I think so. I should have been prepared. But I'm traditional taboo.
That is correct.
And I'm
if you go into Twitter and type in traditional taboo, you will come up.
Yeah, and then I have traditionaltaboo.com. You can find me there too.
Excellent. So check that out. We have no more questions, which is good. Well, it's good and it's not, but we don't want to run this a little too much over. I know TJ has to take off, and it's going to be an early day for me as well. It's already 11 o'clock Eastern here on the best coast.
Sorry I kept you guys up so late.
No. Yeah. This is typical for us. We try not to run over 2 hours. We've had, I think, it's rare, but we've gone up to 4 hours, I think.
Yeah.
For the fireside chats.
For the fireside chats and guests too. We had Griffith from the Blackmore.
Secrets of Blackmore.
Secrets of Blackmore. Thank you. I was just having a brain fart there for a moment. That's completely geek related, and it goes back to the origins of Dungeons and Dragons. But we looked up, and it was 3 hours and 40 minutes had gone by. So it happens, but it's very rare. But we want to keep this around 2 hours, especially for the replay. So everyone in the chat, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the questions. We see a few new faces. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate that. And anyone who's listening or watching later, thank you as well. Hit the like button. Make sure you leave a comment. Those are always helpful. And make sure you share the video with a friend. These are obviously live, but they will be saved and uploaded immediately to YouTube, so you can go back and watch it later. So,
and I do answer questions in my DMs. If anybody does have just general questions, I do answer those. And my email is on my website if you do have questions about DS or, random aspects therapy wise. But I obviously can't go too deep in all of that. But I can answer questions.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Let's do real quick housekeeping. Robert, everyone find you?
Robert Kuzland on Twitter, Instagram, and other places on the internet like that, and also as a member of the Masculine Geek.
There you go. TJ, yourself?
TJMartinell.com.
Fantastic. And last but not least, and it's good to have Rob back again to see.
Always great to have Rob.
Always good to do Rob. Exactly. Rob, where can everyone find you?
Rob says .net.
Fantastic. It's on his shirt.
He was prepared, unlike me.
I think everyone was prepared. Indeed, everyone was prepared tonight. This was a good show. Once again, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And everyone, we will see you on, I don't think we have anything this weekend. We do not. We'll see you next week, next Wednesday. I think we have a D&D game, but I'm not sure. But stay tuned. All right. Good night, everyone.